Test 1, 2. Cool. And can you hear this? Great. That's the lute sound. Yeah, cool. And it looks like my, what do you call it, connection, the broadband is a lot better today. Let me shut this up. I don't need to hear my own video. Yeah, it was my Wi-Fi receiver antenna. Just needed to move it to a better location. So anyway, we are looking at, well, I was looking at Most Sacred Queen Who Lives with Her Galley, but for this stream, we're going to continue looking at Robert Dowland's Variety of Lute Lessons. Now, we did do this much of Jean-Baptiste Bessard's observations on lute, you know, his lesson. The main takeaway from this section, excuse me, is the fingering. Bessard suggests, you know, just if you play classical guitar, you're very much familiar with this. In other words, what the hell is this? Oh, right. Yeah, so if you play classical guitar, you're familiar with the concept of positioning, right? So the fingers stay pretty much fixed to a certain fret. You know, so first finger goes to first fret, second finger to second fret, third finger on third fret, fourth finger on fourth fret, right? And that's first position. You move them, regardless of where you move them, you know, that's the position to stay on. And that's true for whatever string. Now, and that's basically his point here. The thing that I find interesting here is that for the first two strings, you know, the second course and the first course, or string rather, because it's a chanterelle. So the second course and the chanterelle is that he uses the fourth finger for the third fret. So 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. And then for the third course in downward, he uses the third finger for that third fret. I believe there's a practicality here that I can't remember if it was mentioned, and I wasn't rereading it earlier to double check on this. But there's a practicality that I come across when I play some of this music, and that is that using the third finger on the third fret for third course and lower allows the fourth finger to be used for melodic runs on the second string and on the second course and the chanterelle. So for example, or so forth, so on. You see how I'm using 4 1 0 4 1 0, so forth, so on, whatever, right? So there's that practical aspect. Basically, kind of like a break. You know, if you play clarinet, you have a break, you know, in the fingers or whatever. I wish I could explain. I don't play clarinet, so I can't really explain that too well. But it kind of reminded me of it, because I know of it. I'm aware of it, but I don't know much of it. But anyway, so that's basically his point here in this entire little section that I'm showing here. So he continues in these examples. You see the finger is laid out over the letter which is nearest B. The fourth finger stops that letter which is furthest from B, and the third, right? So yeah, so same thing I just said. You know, first finger on B, fourth finger stops on the letter furthest from B. And I think it also talks about stretching. But anyway, let's move on to the next section. for gripping of stops in B. Okay, so basically, first fret stuff, you know, multiple things on the first fret, multiple notes on the first fret. So forth, so on. So let's see. Excuse me. Let's see, so this section begins right here. So, but if the letter that we doubt of be placed not alone, but with one or more other letters, which, what? Conjunction, right. So, sorry, the I instead of the J is still throwing me off a bit. Hang on, let me reread that. But if the letter that we doubt of to be, crap, damn it, 16th century. But if the letter that we doubt of be placed not alone, but with one more other letters, which conjunction we for this time will call a grissa. And I was looking up the word grissa the other time, but let me continue. Then the difficulty is greater. Neither can anything certainly be prescribed in this case, but that which use and custom doth teach us. Yet, so far as I can, I will provide that thou shalt not be destitute of help. Right. So basically, he's saying, when placing multiple fingers on the same fret, anything goes, just follow the convention, what's natural, so forth, so on. But he will say something about it, to kind of help. And let me look up the word grissa. I think that means steps. So let's see. 16th century word grissa. Or grife. No, it's grissa. Primarily had two meanings, a step or degree. In flight of stairs, the usage of is now obsolete. The word is related to grade or gree. And then the next definition is a pig, especially a young pig, related to modern grice or gris, whatever. All right, so yeah, step, degree. So hang on, let's reread that sentence with the this context. But if the letter that we doubt of be placed not alone, but with one more other letter, which conjunction we for this time will call a step, a gris, a step, then the difficulty is greater. Neither can anything certainly be prescribed in this case, but that which use and custom doth teach us. Yet so far as I can, I will provide that thou shalt not be destitute of help. Yeah, step makes sense. Alright, anyway. First, keep this rule, that how oftsoever two bees happen to be on two strings which stand close together, let them be stopped together on the top of the finger. Yet, understand that this only of the first, second, or third string. For if two bees stand... Okay, hang on. Let's digest that sentence real quick. First, keep this rule: that how oftsoever two bees happen to be on two strings which stand close together, let them be stopped together with the top of the finger. Yet understand that this only of the first, second, or third string. Okay, so right there. So he's basically saying capo, right? Partial capo, if they're right next to each other, right? Such as these two on the first fret, or those two. And that's on the first three strings. Alright, continuing on. For if two bees stand together in the other strings, namely the bass strings, then they must be stopped not with the top of the first finger, but with the same finger laid over the whole fret. Okay, is he talking about full-on capo? I think he is. I think he's talking about partial capos and full capos. Let me reread that. For if two Bs stand together in the other strings, namely the bass strings, and they must be stopped with the top of the first finger, but with the same finger laid over the whole fret. Right, so basically I guess he's also saying that there's no choice but to lay the whole finger over the entire fret, right? So I guess, you know, for a chord like this, right, capo, then there's cases like these when they're right next to each other, especially in the basses, as he says. Okay, the first finger, but with the same finger laid over the whole fret. Right, so, okay, you have no choice but to lay the finger over the whole fret. Capo. The second rule is that whensoever two Bs are founded on two strings that are not close together, but have a letter A between which them or more letters, then such Bs be stopped with the forefinger and the second finger. Okay, so use the second finger, first and second, if you have something like this. So let's say this is a B, A, and a B on the string, like that. And he's saying whether it's an A in between or whatever other letter. Right, strings that are not together, not next to each other. So forth, so on. Right. Alright, and then he says the third rule is that whensoever the said Bs shall happen to be on two or more strings, betwixt hang on, let me look up that word, because I think I misread it the first time around. So let's see. For between. Oh, between. Okay, so hang on, let me reread that other sentence where that word was. Where was it? Here it is. The second rule is that whensoever two Bs are founded on the same strings that are not close together, but have the letter A between them, or letters, or more letters, then let such Bs be stopped with the four fingers and, okay, yeah, between makes sense. The third rule is that whensoever the said Bs shall happen to be on two or more strings between which there is no A, but some other letter or a line or more vacant, wherein afterward some other letter than A shall be, set then the forefinger must be laid over the stop B. Let these examples serve for all the parts of this rule. Okay, so I guess he's saying if there's if it's two Bs, next to each other, on adjacent strings. Sorry, not non-adjacent strings. Right, they're separated. you don't always have to use 1 and 2, especially if there's no open string in between. He's saying you can capo because that string does not need to be, because it doesn't matter if the string in between is stopped or not. So the capo will be easier in that case. Okay, so far, courses 3, 2, and 1, adjacent Bs, partial capo. Courses 4 and lower, adjacent Bs, you can do a full capo. Non-adjacent Bs, 1 or 2 fingers, and then should the same scenario happen but no A is expected to be played between the Bs, then you can capo. So forth, so on. Alright, so that's pretty much the main takeaway here. So he's given this example. So D, D, B, B. He's given that chord. And let me position myself properly here so you can see it better in my tiny screen. There it is. And then the next chord is this. Same thing. Same partial capo with the first finger on the first fret. Then the next string is this. Oh, he's doing this. See, that doesn't work for me. Ah, interesting. He's doing something weird like this. He's having me do something like this. Dude, that doesn't work. That's weird. I'd rather just do this then. Yeah, that doesn't work. That's stupid. Okay. And then he gives another example. This. Yeah, that sounds like Warpic. Anyway. And then he gives this example here. So that's on the 5th string, and that's on the 4th string, 3rd string. So that's 1 and 2. And then he's going to give this example here. Okay, that checks out. And then he gives this example here. Same chord shapes, just moved up. And then he gives this example. And then he gives this example, keeping the bigger capo. And then he gives this example. That's an E. Capo here, and then he gives this example. Oh, wait a minute. So I guess these are supposed to be played together. I think that's what the line represents. Da da, and this da da. Right? So let's see. Let's play them together. So on, and then this one he has this. Right, and then he has this example, the C, the the second finger. So this kind of breaks the rule. That should be a fourth on that D. This one here. Right, so C with the second finger. And then he has this. Whoa, that's a weird chord. Oh, that's an E, right. Right, like so. And then this. Sorry, my finger just sucks. And then this. Right? Yeah. Anyway, I like the other temperament. Okay, and then he says, and because it is impossible to set down in writing particularly all these things which we shall find by daily use necessary to concern this chapter 1, this chapter, I have placed here certain of the common steps or stops wherein are one, be, or many, which must be stopped, either laying the finger flat over the fret, or otherwise, which you may easily perceive, if they be written together in more places than two, in such forms as you see them here marked. Okay, so he's just giving more examples for you to mess around with, you know. Right. Yeah, it's giving more chords, so that's cool. Yeah, I don't like that one, but there's no choice. I guess I would just leave out that one. I wonder if he got criticism for this. Let's see. And then he's got D, C, and B, B. Right. And then there's this one. The first one from the last one. Right. And then there's this one. And there's this one. Yeah, it keeps adding a D to the string. Right. God, fuck, that hurts. And then there's that. And there's that. There's the B, C and D and B. Where am I? Right. Oh, that's an E. My bad. It's like, what? And then we got this one. Nope. It's an awful chord. And then we have this one. That's an E. Maybe I need to retune. Let's see. Then we have this E and that, and then we have this. Is that right? No, that's a C. Oh God, that's an awful one. That's an awful chord right there. Okay. Where am I? Right. And then we have... Sorry, I don't mean to torture anybody by going through this. Through each one. There's that one. And then we have this one. Same one, just add the D, as she said. And then we have this one. That's a nice one. That fits the hand so much better. And then there's this one. And then there's this one. Oh. Wait a minute. Oh wait, no. Oh, that's the one I just played. And I'm looking at this one here. So now moving on to the next one here. Oh, that's a D. Okay, that's why it didn't look right. And we have this one. Tough chord. But I can do it. I'm a big boy. And then this one. I've come across that one. And then so that's this one. Alright, two more, and then this. And then that. Cool. And it says where in here, and that's basically to signify what the next page is. And I think that did that for the purposes of putting the books together, but I'm not sure. Looks like the next lesson starts here of holding. I'm going to take a little break here. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Cool, there I am. Alright, so let's read this. So, where the mark that the finger must be laid, cross the fret often, nay, very oftentimes, though you find but one letter of a kind in that fret, that the other may be the swiftlier stopped. What? Swiftlier. Okay, swiftlier stopped, which cannot by any certain rule, but only by use be learned. Okay, let's reread this. Where marked that the finger must be laid, cross the fret often. Okay, so if there's fret crossing, what does it mean by crossing the fret often? Does he mean vertically or horizontally? That's curious. Nay, very oftentimes, that the other may be swiftlier stopped, which cannot by any certain rule, but only by use be learned. Okay, he's talking about rapid movement, right? It sounds like it. Let's see. Where marked that the finger must be laid, cross the fret often. Nay, very oftentimes, though you find but one letter of a kind in that fret, very oftentimes, though you find but one letter of a kind in that fret, that the other may be swiftlier stopped, which cannot by any certain rule, but only by use be learned. Okay. I'm not sure I understand this one, to be honest. And no, besides the same steps, the letters differ not, yet are not stopped always after the same sort by reason of former of subsequent stops, which thing thou must diligently mark. For the letter C, I think there is no less controversy about it, for some men do stop two C's in the same fret, okay, when no letter but A goes with them. With the second and third finger, very elegantly, I always stop it with the first and second finger, unless it happen that B be on the same gris for them. Same gris. For then, of necessity, must the two C's be stopped with the second and third fingers. But if the said two C's, and with them other letters than A, you must lay your finger cross the fret, though not always, yet most an end, if those letters be under C. Okay, god damn it. Under C, which otherwise should, according to the rule, be stopped with the second finger, unless it chanced that after the gris wherein it is played, another C follows immediately in some other string. Because to the end of the first, namely the letter which is set in some base, may be the letter beheld, it must needs be stopped with the first finger. And this shall suffice for the letter C. More and more certain rules you shall gather by use and practice, yet have I set down some examples lest the obscurance of, let me look up that word. Obscureness. Wait, what? obscuring. The obscureness. Okay. Okay. Lest the obscureness of these things I have delivered might hinder thee. Okay, so he's saying, take it with a grain of salt. To whatever he said here. Because goddamn, it's just sober voice. Sober voice. God damn it, dude. It's and to think of how much time it took to prepare these pages, and assuming that I understand this printing process correctly, which I don't, because I've never really looked into it fully. But I think they used to set each letter in what, like a line or something, and then they would print, basically make the page, from like stamps, or I don't know what the fuck they use, but setting each letter one by one. Maybe not the letters, but maybe they had words already kind of set, and putting the words together, and like still, regardless how they did it, it was still a long time for this to be made, and you would think that they would just simplify the way they say things. I cannot imagine this being the way that they would speak in vernacular. Then again, maybe I'm just being chronocentric here. Ethnocentric and chronocentric. And excuse me for 1 second. Alright, so let's play some of this stuff here, and let's see if we can figure out what he was talking about. Although I probably won't be able to figure anything out, because I can't remember what the hell he was saying anyway in the first place. Alright, so here he has C. Alright, 2 adjacent strings, which, previously he had said, use a capo. He's using 2 and 1. Typically, you can also use 1 and 2, so I guess this is what he meant about fret cross. No, maybe not fret crossing. But there's 2 alternative configurations for using 2 fingerings on the same fret. So in this case, he has the 2 over the 1, and in this other case, he has the 1 over the 2. Okay, and then in this next one he has 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2. So he has this, this, and then he has this, right? This is the same fret, 2 fingers. Normally you would use 1 or 2, but since 1 is occupied, you use the 3. I think that's what he was talking about. And then there's this one. Right? And then there's this one. Right, and I guess in this configuration you use 2 over 1, because then you change the 1 to a B. Right, and then the next one is just that, but down a string set. And then we have this. Right? 2/3, but there's no 3/2 because it's unnecessary. And then we have E with the 4th finger, 2nd, 3rd, and 1. Okay, now we have 2/3, same thing. Right? And then we have A, C, D, right, C chord. Just like that. And then he has this. Now, there it is. It's difficult to tell what course I'm on by feeling. Sometimes, to be honest. Something I'm just gonna get used to. And then you use the 3 there instead of the 2 because you're gonna use the 2 to set down the C. And then now you have the 2 on the C because you're gonna need the 2 on the B. Why the 2? That should be the 1. That should be 1. I think they screwed up here. Unless they meant to do this. But that doesn't make sense. I think they meant 1. And then we have E, C, and A. That chord that I don't like because just use this. Alright. And then let's see. That looks like a B. Oh no, that's an E. Here. It's just closed for some reason. Hey, Starwood Headway. Cool. Sweet. I'm gonna have to make a lute edition of that. Oh, man, that was really cool. Yeah. So forth, so on. Cool. Anyway, where was I? Right. I was where? Here. No. I forget. Oh yeah. Hey. Damn. Yeah. This chord configuration does not work, like at all. And I think maybe, I mean, it could work if the fret the fingerboard was readiest, and the strings along with it. I can see that working. Otherwise, not really. Doesn't really work. Then we have this one, right, the Stairway to Heaven chord. And we have this one. He's giving a Stairway to Heaven right here. That's cool. And then we have this. Same thing. And then we have E. No, that's a C with the first finger, and then E with the second finger. That's the octave. Capoing. And then G. Okay, that's a fucked up chord, but it's not terribly uncomfortable. Okay, and then we have F, E, D, and C. Right, and then we have this one. Yeah, give me a second. Cool. Where was I? Right, this one. That's a jazzy chord. A little too jazzy for this time period, maybe. And then we have this. That's why it sounded too jazzy. I was doing something different on the wrong string set. Right, and then we have this. And then we're gonna have this. Wait, what the hell is this? So, okay, this. Okay. Shit. I'm moving that finger down to D, making it minor, and then we have C. Is that right? Should be. And then we have, I just played that, and this, and then this. I think someone's talking about me again. Probably talking shit. Or it's just allergies. And then we have this one. Right. Right. Because that's convenient as opposed to this. And then right, because that makes sense. Right, because that makes sense. And then we have this. I don't like that chord. Excuse me. And many other besides which must be done in this manner. For the letter D, I said before, it must be stopped with the third and fourth fingers. Therefore, the rule will hold, in my opinion, whether two Ds begin on one stop, have no other letter between them, or have one letter or more between them. Yet, thus that the D on the less strings be stopped with the fourth finger, and the D on the great strings with the third finger, and if happily three Ds come together, you may, for the most part, use the second, third, fourth fingers, or lay your finger across the fret, as those stops which goes before or follow will bear it. If this rule, let it be also be an example. Okay. Give me 1 second. Alright. Let me go back here to the stream so keep an eye on it. Alright, so and then he gives us example. Let's see if we can play it. So he has this, and then he has this, and then he has this, right? Pretty much what I was saying from the first lesson. What? Really? Okay. And then so we have this motion here. Right. And here's an example of a D on the thicker strings being stopped with the fourth finger. This one, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there is this, I'm not convinced that low A is supposed to be a D. I think it's supposed to be enough in this case. And then we have this. And then we have this. Sorry. And then we have this. And where's my G spot here? Here it is. Right. This chord. And we have this. And we have this. Sorry. And we have this one, 2 or 3. Oh, I'm getting a choice. Fancy. And then we have this one. And then we have this one. And then we have this one. Right. And then we have this one. That's the chord I was looking for in Melancholy Galliard. Anyway, and then we have this one. I think that's supposed to be a 2 on the E. Like, what else is it supposed to be? A 4 makes more sense there than a 3 to 3. I guess it's easy to screw it up, but I don't know. He chose 4 for a reason. And then we have this. This one, which we've already covered. And then we have this one. Oh, god damn it. Is that right? That's a hard chord to play. Alright, and then last one. Here it is. Okay. What does the C mean? Could that be the tuning for the low string? Probably not. Did this have a letter here? No. Did this have a letter? No. Interesting. Necessary of the same order you may keep in the lower frets, only in them for the most part, and very often we used to lay the finger across the fret for more easiness, right, of holding. Alright, so I'm going to stop it right here. This was pretty much the last section of the subsequent section in Jean-Baptiste Pissart's observations as far as fingering. So it looks like next time we'll look at this, we're going to be looking into holding, whatever he refers to, whatever that may refer to. The use of the right hand, interesting. To know how to strike single strings, being sound among full stops. Some examples here of that. More observations. And it looks like that's going to be it. And then we're going to start the observations by John Dowland. And I'm curious what he has to say. His very voice. And then here's the tuning of the lute. But yeah, we'll look at this next time. I'm going to stop stream for now. I'm going to take a long break, probably going to eat something, and then I'll be back later working on some Dowland pieces. Thank you for tuning in if you tuned in.